Good evening. We're going to get started, honor everyone's time. If you don't know me, I hope I know most of you. My name is Linda Tanner, and I'm President and CEO of Visiting Nurse Hospice Care. I want to thank you tonight for joining us for our 6th annual Perspectives in Healthcare. Tonight's forum is funded by our VNHC Foundation, which raises more than $2 million each year to directly support charity care and community benefit programs such as the Loan Closet, Serenity House, bereavement services, music therapy, pet therapy, and community education programs like tonight's forum. Together, our mission is to provide compassionate and trusted care, and I am so proud that for 110 years, VNHC has remained the leading nonprofit provider of comprehensive home health care, personal care, palliative care, and hospice care to help people live at home wherever they may call home. 6 years ago, we started the forum to provide an opportunity for our community to gather and discuss important healthcare issues. And I think tonight's topic, validating dreams and visions of the dying, is more important than we realize for patients, caregivers, and medical professionals. Oftentimes, end-of-life experiences are recorded as confusion, agitation, or hallucinations. But what if they're more than that? Tonight, we'll hear about the first published quantifiable medical research on dreams and visions of the dying by Dr. Christopher Kerr. Dr. Kerr is a neurobiologist and the CEO and medical officer for the Center for Hospice and Palliative Care in Buffalo, New York. And later in the evening, our Associate Medical Director, Dr. Michael Kearney, will join Dr. Kerr for an in-depth conversation. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kerr to the forum.
Thank you. Good evening. Well, thank you all for coming out. Before I begin, I'd just like to offer a few disclaimers. The first is this talk is different in that a great proportion of it is videos. I learned early that it was very important to let the patients and the families speak. And truthfully, I don't have language for all that I've seen. There's a challenge in describing the inner world of the patient. It's essentially a blank canvas, and you can pick up all sorts of brushes and perspectives, be it philosophical, religious, etc. I don't really come to it with a particular vantage point other than really wanting to message what I'm hearing. In fact, I didn't really even have an interest in dying. If anything, I had an aversion. If you have an aversion to dying, the safest place is medical school. Where they don't talk about it, let alone the experiencing of it. My aversion worsened in residency, and I actually formally petitioned to get out of the mandatory hospice rotation, which I succeeded at. I was more interested in spending time in the ICU, where if someone died, it was just a failure to comply. By now, you're probably wondering, why are we listening to them? So anyways, what happened was 1999, I was a cardiology fellow, and I needed to moonlight to support my family. And I saw an ad in the paper asking for a doctor. And the first thought was, what kind of place puts a want ad in the paper for a doctor? And the real question is, what kind of doctor would answer the ad? But I did, and I went to hospice, and immediately was struck by what I didn't know. And hospice forces you to get out of a medical paradigm and instead of just looking at failing parts, look at people in totality. and listen to your colleagues from other disciplines. So I learned from nurses and chaplains and therapists and volunteers. And I saw what I really didn't recognize before, which is dying people having these profound experiences. So that's how I got here. Just to clarify, what we're talking about is these non-physical subjective elements of dying. This is very distinct then from near-death experiences. Actually, we don't hear of tunnels and lights so much, actually rarely. Those are people who are near death or clinically dead and then come back. And this is not about the phenomenologic, the end-of-life phenomena, so temperatures changing, sudden awakenings, lights flickering, that sort of thing. What's really important is the vantage point. We tend to think of dying in the minutes, maybe hours. What I'm talking about is the process. It can happen over weeks, months, and sometimes even over a year. I'm going to start off showing you this video of a gentleman named Paul. And he's kind of prototypical in that he covers it all. So he starts off talking about his deceased wife, and you'll notice that it's vivid. It's palpable to him. You also notice very, very little is said, but he understands or feels something. The other thing that happens is he talks about travel or preparing to go, which turns out to be a very common thing. And lastly, he reflects or he has a dream about a meaningful event, particularly if that event brought you proximate to death in life. So this is Paul.
I dream in color most times, and she always wears a beautiful light blue. It could be a suit, it could be a gown, it could be a dress, but it's always light blue. And a couple of times she's gave me the little beauty pageant wave, and a couple of times she sort of always with a smile. Only one or twice I've ever heard her voice, but she always kind of lets me know that she's fine. I get that feeling after a dream like that. And one I had not too long ago, I've only lived in 2 houses all my life, which is kind of rare these days for a guy 82 years old. I lived on Michigan Avenue in the city. She wanted me to pack up some things for her. So I had this crazy dream. I'm packing goods, and I'm setting them for some reason up high. And everything went fine until I fell out of bed. And I really clunked. I banged up pretty good. The boxes flew and I flew. Another thing that I've dreamt of quite often, not lately, I'm back in the service. I'm at Fort Devens up in Massachusetts, where they were forming this company that we're going to oversee, a new company. And the guys are all young. They're like, I remember them, and I'm old. And I'm trying to tell them, guys, I've been here, I've done this, I'm not going to do it again. And they're arguing with me. And that's a crazy dream. I don't have any bad dreams. My dreams are, usually maybe I lost the sale, but I mean, even that isn't bad. I've not had any dreams that dwell on my sickness at all. And they're usually, even if I don't remember everything, I wake up with a smile on my face. They're happy.
So, this is what dying looks like. Paul died 3 weeks after filming it. And it's quite remarkable. So, what I did after seeing a lot of this, I started to look in the literature, and I was surprised that medicine had so little to say about the experience of dying. But where medicine was silent, the humanities really have never stopped talking about these experiences. So I mentioned in the Bible and in Plato's Republic. It wasn't really until the last 150 years that people started to make at least observations that this was a true clinical phenomena. And as early as 100 years ago, they were saying these people weren't confused; they were actually lucid. Dr. Barrett actually was a physicist, and his wife was the physician. And she would come home and make observations. So he dedicated his life to recording these. And then in the 60s and 70s, OSIS did a survey of 5,000 doctors and nurses, did in the United States and did in Canada, and the vast majority of them had witnessed this. And again, they were not only common, they typically saw the deceased, and the vast majority of them were comforting. So if you kind of had to sum up the literature, they're describing something that is near universal or intrinsic to dying, by and large comforting, and it got people more comfortable with this idea of letting go. And again, they were distinct from hallucinations. So why so significant? Why has medicine had so little to say about the experiences of the dying? And part of the problem is it's easy to medicalize. It's easy to marginalize and to dismiss as a confusional state. And part of the problem is that it is true. Most people going from living to death actually have a period of either altered alertness or confusional states, what we call medically as delirium. But delirium is fundamentally distinct. So delirium is defined as disorganized thought, unable to sort your surroundings. It's acute. It tends to fluctuate by definition. And more often than not, people are distressed. End-of-life experiences couldn't be more opposite. People actually have heightened acuity. They're introspective. They're given meaning. But the biggest difference is the affect, or the feeling that they're given, which is usually peace, calm, and comfort. This is best demonstrated. This is Jeannie.
This was a very significant thing. But when I woke up, I was happy. It left me with a good feeling that somebody was there. I was laying in bed, and people were walking very slowly by me. The right-hand side, I didn't know, but they were all very friendly, and they touched my arm or my hand when they went by. But the other side were people that I knew. My mom and dad were there, my uncle. Everybody I knew that was dead was there. And they passed and did the same thing. The only thing was, my husband wasn't there, nor was my dog. And I knew that I would be seeing them, or hoping to see them. During the period of time that after I woke up, the next day I assume, and I felt good. I felt good to see some people. And the other ones didn't bother me either. When I told my family that I was happy about it, and that's what they asked. How does it make you feel? Well, I feel good about it. I thought it was a good dream, but boy, I remember seeing every piece of their face. And I mean, I know that was my mom and dad and uncle and my brother-in-law. And I have seen my mother recently more.
How do you feel when you see her?
Oh, wonderful. I can't say that my mother and I got along all those years, but we made up for it at the end. Yeah, but I never realized it as much as lately. It seems like I'm doing more and having more substantial dreams than if people would understand them or go poo-poo and, say, I don't believe in that kind of stuff. I think more and more people are getting a little bit more hip to dreams than they were before.
That's Jean. So it'd obviously be short-sighted, dehumanizing actually, to dismiss her as having a confused or broken mind. She shows us there's this paradox that she's physically dying, but she's spiritually, emotionally very vivid and alive, very present. The other thing she shows us is these end-of-life experiences not only hold meaning, personal meaning, but they're tied to some of our greatest needs, to be loved or to be forgiven. This is the idea of connectivity between the past and the present, between the realities she knows and those she doesn't, and this idea of really continuity between and across lives. Time and distance seems to go. So mothers get reunited with lost children, and children get united with lost parents. So what is missing? We know they hold therapeutic value, yet it had not been described in a medical or caregiving framework. Interesting, nobody had ever asked the patient directly or attempt to quantify this experiences. So this is where we came in. In our first study, we really wanted to show that this was actually occurring, or if it was occurring, the frequency, the content, comforting or not, how real it seemed, etc. So we looked at 50 patients who were admitted to our inpatient unit, most 2 to 3 weeks from dying, and we interviewed them near daily until death. And they were screened for confusion. This was a university-approved study, so they obviously had to consent, etc. In total, we had 453 interactions. That number now is actually closer to 1,500. And in that time, we found nearly 90% of people reporting at least one end-of-life experience. We had a scale of 0 to 10 that you were asked to click off how real this seemed, 10 being as real as could be, and the vast majority were 10 out of 10. And the comment we hear most often is actually these were different than any dream they have. Oftentimes you'd hear people say, I don't typically dream, but. And interestingly, almost half were not just occurring in sleep. They said they were occurring in states of wakefulness. And we really don't know what nomenclature to use. Dreams are the only thing as our reference point. But what people tell us, in fairness, is that these aren't like their normal dreams. And I don't know what this is, whether this is lucid dreaming, where they're coming in and out of different stages of sleep, etc. But that's what we were told. 46% dreamed most commonly of deceased friends or loved ones. About 40% this idea of travel or preparing to go. 27% of the living, and pets were almost 40%. Yeah. And we asked people to rate on a scale of comfort, with 5 being the most comforting. And as you can see, seeing the deceased was associated with the greatest level of comfort. About 19% said their dreams were distressing. But as you'll see, that's a very simplistic way to measure it, and it does not mean they're not therapeutic. And 21% were neutral. This is actually what I was most interested in. We were very interested in the temporal relationship. What happens over time as people approximate death? One of the things that shocked me from the beginning was the nurses being able to prognosticate based on these dreams. Actually, my first week of hospice, I got into an argument with a nurse about this. Anyway, she was right. On the x-axis, 0 is death. And the blue is comforting, the green is neither comforting nor distressing, and the red is distressing. And as you can see, the comforting dreams pick up in frequency, and that's typically seen the deceased. So these were our conclusions. These are identifiable themes. So we had people pick from a menu list of content, obviously highly realistic, carried enormous emotional significance, and again, seeing the deceased increase with frequency as people approach death, and therefore they were most comfortable. This is Florence. What's interesting here is that she takes the ordinary and in her description thematically, and it becomes absolutely extraordinary. And in the process, this is hard to imagine this is somebody so close to dying, there isn't a trace of fear.
Tell us about the dreams.
It's very hard to pinpoint because they were so real. And all these years, my husband's been dead and my daughter.
And when did your daughter pass?
7 years ago.
Okay, at the age of 37?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your husband died?
61.
61, okay.
I have seen them, not their face, not their clothes, but I knew it was them. But there was nothing really remarkable to define that was Dick or John. But the other night, I fell right into a sleep. We were like sitting at the kitchen table, laughing. I could see their faces. I could tell it was their clothes. We were laughing, we were talking, we were eating. It was like a regular Sunday dinner night.
That's wonderful.
It is. And then Monday night, the same thing happened. But the same identical thing. We're laughing, we're talking, we're having a ball.
How did it make you feel?
I woke up Monday morning and I went, was that real? And I said, that was real. That was really real.
And were you in your home?
Yeah. It was a warm day.
Okay. And you don't remember a lot of what was said, but you do remember what you felt. Is that right?
I don't remember what we talked about. But I know that it was stuff that we would talk about in ordinary circumstances, like my brother's job, my job, how John was doing in school, you know, stuff that,
Yeah, life.
like,
How real did the dream seem?
oh, absolutely, it was real.
It happened.
We were sitting there as much as we were sitting here.
Okay. Have you ever had a dream that was that vivid?
No.
No. That was the most vivid dream. And we hear this a lot, and it's very hard to tell whether it's real or it's a dream. Yeah.
It made me feel like that whole 12 years had never existed.
12 years, that's interesting. 12 years since he's been gone. Okay. Because it was so real that he was there in the present.
And 7 years since my daughter was gone. It was like we were always together, never separated.
Yeah. How does it make you feel about the prospect of dying? How does it change your
Oh,
view?
I'm not afraid of dying.
Okay. Why are
I
you not?
wasn't afraid of dying the day after my husband died.
So you were probably worried about her, that's why.
That's
Okay.
why.
Okay. So then
I
you
wouldn't have stuck around, to tell you the truth.
Okay. You must have loved him very much and had a wonderful marriage.
We did,
Isn't that great?
just the three of us. But if it wasn't for my daughter still being alive, I'd have gone right after my husband.
I understand. Yeah.
I'd have found a way.
That's funny. That's what my mother says. When my father died, she said she would have just ended it, except she had children. Yeah. Yeah. I understand.
Then, after my daughter died,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be here at all.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, everybody says you have a reason to be here. Everybody says God's not done with you yet. Well, what the hell's he going to do with me? I have no one left. He can't keep me like this forever. I'm not meant for anything anymore. I can't help anybody. If you fell down and I had to help you get up, I couldn't help you get up.
Right. So you're wondering about your purpose and your meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what all this means. Mm-hmm. Does it make you think you're going to see them? Okay.
If I quit swearing.
If you what?
Quit swearing.
Oh, you're worried you're going to end up in the wrong place. I have a feeling you're okay. It's interesting that you can be in a dying process and at the same time feeling very much alive, right? And that made you feel alive.
Okay.
Oh, that's wonderful.
If you didn't hear her, she was worried because we're swearing. So, this is actually one of my favorite patients, and I'll tell you why. This is Horace. You can tell how tied his experience is to his emotional self, and that these experiences really don't deny death, they actually transcend it for him. And you get the sense, it's palpable how awe-inspiring this is, and he's really left after this experience with this sense of connectivity, or of belonging.
My wife all of a sudden appeared and went beside her. And it seemed like I want to say running, but we weren't running. It was just a good time. With, I don't know, but everything had left you, there was no problems. No, everything was happiness. It was like he wished the world was understanding and clear and she was always beautiful to me. But she was even prettier. She was. So vivid and so it was like lifelike. And it just it felt good.
Remarkable. So that was our first study, and since we've done, I think we've completed 4 or 5 since. The pioneering study, we were surprised in that the majority of people were already having these experiences when we started the study, which was week before death. So we wanted to go farther upstream and look at people who were, up to a year prior to dying. And we really wanted, our first study was really closed-ended questions. Are you having this? Yes, no kind of thing. So we really wanted more open-ended questions. We also wanted to do a deeper look. So what does comfort mean? And what's happening? How are people having these transformative experiences? What are the kind of the psychodynamics of that? And then finally, what is the implications for those left behind, the bereaved? So in our second study, we interviewed people weekly. And again, we accumulated 548 dreams. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this except to say that what we described in our pioneering study, the comfort or not comfort, we found a lot richer dynamics in the content. So in terms of effect, there's also curiosity. There's an enormous amount of humor. It's just not so simple. So they're broader, they're more complex. There's a range of emotions. They're typically recalled. We basically validated our first study, and this was a different research team. I oversee them, but it's a different group of folks. And I think what's really important is this idea that distressing dreams are not necessarily negative in themselves, that they're actually perhaps are some of the most meaningful events that people have. There's a documentary being done, or that's near complete, and this is Dwayne, and he really epitomizes this idea of a distressing dream that's also positive in the end.
You know, I had a lot of good dreams that I was mad that I got woke up from, and I tried to hurry up, get back to sleep so I can get back into it. And I couldn't, because it was a good one.
What were you dreaming about in those ones?
Oh, you don't want to know about that one. You don't want to know about them.
So, Dwayne was in his mid-40s, and he had head and neck cancer, and he was African-American gentleman that had a life that's hard to describe. He started on crack when he was 16, and he spent more of his life in prison than out of prison, kind of regular stints. What's fascinating is how lovable, how intelligent, how he enjoyed, interacted with other people, and what a good father he was. He didn't live his life as somebody with regret, despite lots to be regretful for. He ended up coming to our inpatient unit because his mother was using his pain medication. So it's a story of multi-generational impoverishment and addiction. He came into our unit, and he started to have a dream that at his site of his cancer, which was his neck, he was being stabbed by all those that he had done wrong to in his mind.
My dreams, man, my nightmares, I don't like them. I think it's because my past is coming back to me, from doing wrong. Because I'm not going to say I'm the perfect guy when I was out there, because I was ripping running the streets, you know, doing wrong to individuals that I knew I shouldn't have been doing wrong to. Now they caught up with me. And now they know my symptoms. They know I'm sick. So now they want to try to hurt me. You know, it was like they were jigging a knife, you know, trying to cut out, you know, my neck, where my cancer was at.
Right.
Stop trying to fight, you know. I'm sorry, you know, trying to fight this guy off from hurting him. That's scary. It's scary to me.
So he woke up and pretty transformed, with a powerful need to reach out to his family and really for the first time to say, I'm sorry.
You know, I'm not a bad individual, man, but I done crossed a lot of people in my life, you know, and I need help. I need help, you know. I don't want to live my life being out in society walking, have to look over my back, man. I just want people to forgive me. And please know that I was sick at the time when I was doing certain things that was hurting them and their families. You know, that's all I want. I don't want them to look at me as a bad individual because I'm not. You know, I need help. I need help.
And he asked specifically to see his one daughter, Brittany, who happened to be in prison at the time, and we advocated to get her released on the grounds her father was dying.
In the midst of me taking my plea, you know, the judge, they let me out. They petitioned to let me out on an ankle bracelet. And at that time, like, I hadn't known who got me out. I thought it was my attorney, and comes to find out it wasn't even my attorney. It was Chris.
And they had the most beautiful reunion in the middle of the hallway.
I had went and I came through the front door, and when I turned the corner, like, he was just walking with his walker, and I said, "Hey, old man." And it was like, I guess he heard my voice and he just like froze and like stuck, and he lifted his head up and he moved that walker and he snatched away from her and he just started walking towards me all fast. And we just like stood there for, I want to say like 3-4 minutes, and we just cried. And he just like kept saying like how sorry he was and like he didn't mean it. And I just told him, don't worry about it. I'm home. You know, I don't even care about that. That was the longest I actually really ever hugged my dad, ever in life. Like, I've hugged my dad all the time, but standing there hugging him for that long, and like my family always, oh, you just worship him, like he just, hello, yeah, that's my dad.
It's an example of these end-of-life dreams are not necessarily, you wouldn't call them comforting. In our naivety, we in our original studies had patients check them off as either comforting or discomforting, when the fact is there's grays in between, and it's life. And the mistake is making a judgment and assuming that discomforting means that they don't have value, when in fact his discomforting dream could not have had any more value for him. It brought him really his own reckoning with himself and what his life was, and really, I think, reach for his better self. How you dream or end-of-life process is really indicative of how you lived. So how, given his life, you know, could he not have some sort of reckoning with a past that was tortured at times? But he came out the other side a better person.
This was actually for me, it was one of the more impactful experiences under this idea of distressing dreams. Mac was a gentleman in his 80s, and he came into our inpatient unit because he couldn't sleep. And he couldn't sleep because what he said was a war problem. And at the age of 16 or 17, he served on the USS Texas, and he was involved in the invasion of Normandy. And he was actually sent out to rescue a stranded platoon and bring them from the shore to the ship. And he just saw nothing but dead bodies all around him. What was remarkable is that for 67 years, he never talked of the war. He wouldn't go to a parade. He wouldn't wear a veteran's hat. His kids knew nothing. In fact, they said that they learned more about him in the last 2 weeks of his life. So this had been in him and fighting for 67 years. And then I went and saw him one day, and he looked entirely different. He was at peace, and he was content. He was able to smile, talk fluidly. And I said, and he was in our study, and I said, so did you have dreams last night? He said, yeah. And he was clicking off the boxes, and he said, one was very, very comforting. And that one, it turned out to be the day he got to relive his discharge, getting his discharge papers from service. And in the neutral dream, he's on a beach, and a dead soldier comes up to him, somebody he doesn't know, and he says, they're going to come and get you. We're going to come and get you next week. And he was able to close his eyes, sleep, and pass comfortably. And there's no medicine, there's no antidepressant, there's no talk therapy that could have done what this experience, this healing, did for him, even though it was in the last days of his life. So one of the things that we've done more recently is look at this idea of what's considered a distressed experience like dying and question, is there growth? Is there meaning finding in this? And this isn't published, or it's actually submitted, I think. We compared patients who were having these experiences to those who weren't. And what we found was that in several areas, such as personal strength, spiritual growth, and overall score of post-traumatic growth, there's significant change for those people. So comfort means a lot of things. It's more than an emotion. It's actually meaning, finding, and growth. One of the areas where there's not in our study is our pediatric population. And children are interesting in that what happens if they haven't known somebody who's died, who comes back for them. And this is Jessica, and at this time she's 13.
My dreams that I have are good dreams now, which I dream about my old dog Shadow that has passed away, and I see him, and he's in a good place, and he's running, he's having fun, but then again he runs away and I never see him again. I feel like it's his meaning of saying goodbye. I have an occasionally where he comes to see me, to I have a feeling to have him say it's okay, that I'm in a safe place.
He comes with a meaning for you, and that meaning is...
we were close. Even though I didn't like him half the time because he would always be on my butt, but I still loved him.
But he's coming back to give you some comfort.
Yeah.
Is it really comforting when he's there in your dream?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it seem very real?
Yeah.
Different than other dreams?
Different than other dreams, yeah.
Yeah, because it seems real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you younger when you see him in his dreams?
Nope, I'm the same exact age I am now.
Or do you feel healthy when you're in those dreams?
No, I'm the same sickness as I am right now.
Okay. Do you ever get to play with him in the dreams?
Yeah, I pet him and stuff.
Okay. So those are nice dreams. You said 5 or 6 times. They happen 5, 6 times a week, or 5 or 6 times since it started?
It started.
When you wake up, sometimes you have to sort out what's real and what's imagined?
Yes, I do have to sort out what's real and what's imagined. I usually just try to lay there in my bed and try to reenact that dream and just think about what just had happened to wake me up.
Yes.
But I do get afraid because I see how dark my room is, and I look on the ground, and the one night I happened to see a long black thing, and that was him by my bed.
Okay. That often happens. So the dream's so real, and then you'll open your eyes, and the dream kind of blurs into what you're really seeing. So you've had that experience where you open your eyes and there's parts of your dreams in your room or in your surrounding. Okay, so when you woke up once, you actually saw him, and then he went away.
Yeah, and then I went down to the ground and went like that, and it looked like his head went up, and then he was gone.
Okay, so you do things when you wake up to check to
If
see.
they're really there.
Yeah.
I feel that that meaning is a meaning of love, and that they're there and they're always going to protect you.
It's funny because he doesn't say anything to you.
No, dogs don't talk.
No, but dogs give messages.
Yeah, they give you a message of heal and love that you're okay.
Okay, so that's shadow.
That's shadow.
The question seemingly is because what happens is we have the clinical interaction, and then this stuff comes out and we go back with a camera, so it's a little awkward. As Jessica got closer to dying, she talked openly about trying to imagine what existence was like without her mom. And her mother's closest friend had died years earlier, and she had seen pictures of her and whatnot. And then, so what Jessica eventually has is a dream where she looks over into her mother's room, and it's the deceased friend who's playing with the shades. And she openly comes back and says, I'm going to be okay. This is Ginny. And Ginny is 16, and she dies actually not long after this video was taken. The thing to note here is just how she constructs literally a structure for herself in which she is secured.
One of the stories I had heard about you was when you were in an MRI machine.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it.
I'd love to hear. In your loud voice.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie.
When I was sleeping, like deep sleep, my Aunt Miriam came down to bring me up to heaven, and she was playing with me with Barbies. And my Aunt Miriam said, get down there and get better. And that's what I'm going to do.
Do you ever get to hold her in the dreams, or does she hold you?
She held me.
Yeah.
She had to wear oxygen
Okay.
because she was very old.
Uh-huh. Did she wear the oxygen in the dream?
No.
She looked better then?
Yeah.
Okay. And you got to play Barbies with her?
Yeah.
And she told you that you had to get going back down there.
She says, I love you and you better go down there and fight your butt off.
Good for her. And when you see your aunt, where are you?
In a castle.
Really? Is it beautiful?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's huge.
Can you describe it for me. Are there other people there?
No.
Okay. Is it warm?
Yes.
Is it sunny?
There's a window that you can see the sun through it.
Uh-huh.
And it has God on the window.
Like a church would?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds beautiful. So this is a pretty special place.
And then there's a piano.
Mm-hmm.
And then a pretty painting of a baby, the little baby. No, the church.
Yeah, like in a church. In a manger kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the castle is? What does it mean?
Safe place.
Safe place. Yeah. Safe place, and it's sunny and it's warm. And your aunt's there.
And then they have a pool.
Really?
A built-in pool.
Whew! You like to swim?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you dream of any animals?
Yeah.
What type of animals do you dream of?
my cousin's dog that passed away.
What was the dog's name?
Moose.
Moose? I bet he was a big dog.
Yeah.
Did you like Moose?
Yeah.
And he died?
And it's a girl.
Girl? Moose was a girl?
Girl.
That's a hard name for a girl. Be called Moose. But Moose the girl dog died some time ago. And sometimes you dream of Moose. Huh. That's...
And I got other pets that died.
What was the bird's name?
Tampa.
Tampa. Okay. And you dream of the bird now.
Yeah.
What does a bird make you feel?
Happy because she was sick like me.
So like you, she was sick, but now she looks beautiful?
Yeah.
Can the bird fly? Can Tampa fly in your dream?
She tries.
Yeah. But she doesn't look sick anymore.
Nope.
Okay.
I see Daisy. That was my grandma's dog.
Daisy?
She passed away.
And so you get to play with that dog in your dreams?
Yeah.
What does all of this mean to you? You get to see all these animals. That's kind of neat, huh?
Yeah.
So these dreams, is it fun to go to sleep to think about what you're going to see?
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't scare you then?
No.
Okay.
I got one more animal.
What animal?
It was a ferret.
Whose ferret?
My sister's.
What's the ferret's name?
Sugar.
Sugar.
Yeah. Because it was all white.
Okay. Sugar die?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now she's up in heaven.
What happens when you see Sugar?
She gets really happy and wants to play.
Thank you for doing this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it. And you got the world's best smile. Is there anything else we should know about you?
That I'm beautiful.
You are beautiful. One of the things we've been interested in for a long time is what effect this has on the bereaved. It's one of these interesting things that can be something that separates people from the bedside or can bring them closer to it. And it can really redefine, obviously, the dying experience. We've done a number of studies. This one's just submitted where we surveyed 228 family caregivers. We have a more recent one of 500. And almost 30% reported that their loved one had an end of life experience, and half of those thought it brought comfort to their loved one. And nearly 60% felt that it helped them in their overall grieving process, which is a really interesting thing, because when you speak to people in therapy over loss and grief, this seldom comes up. So we wrote a paper on that. You know, the general finding is this: the greater the perceived patient comfort, the greater the comfort for those left behind. One of the interesting things in our study, in all of our studies, was the absence of references to religious symbols, actual symbols of faith, be it Jesus, the cross, what have you. And then we had this very interesting experience. So this is Ginny's mom, Michelle. And what had happened, I'll let her do the telling, but the preface to this is Ginny actually had never been to church. Now, one of the arguments of this, the counter to this, there's been people have written about this, is actually the themes of all faith are throughout this, themes of love and themes of forgiveness. And really that our families really are the first classroom of faith, and these are the things that come out again and again and again. But this is Michelle.
right before she went to sleep yesterday, I heard her voice in the bedroom over my baby monitor, and I thought maybe she was calling me, so I asked her, what did you say? And she said nothing, and then I heard her voice again, and I thought, who's she talking to? So I went in there, and she said she was talking to God, and that he was a very old man, a very good-looking, cute man, and that he was going to make her all better, and that she was going to go live up in the castle with my Aunt Marion, who she had been talking to as well.
Is that the first time that you know that she's talked about talking to God?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember ever actually talking to God, so she's talked to my aunt, but I don't think I've ever heard her
she's
say.
talked to your aunt a lot.
Yeah.
How old was she when her aunt died?
It was in 2011, so she was 11.
Boy, she sure left an impression with her. Yeah. Interesting how helpful it's been,
Yeah.
right? That lets her know she's loved and okay.
Yeah.
She sees her healthy.
Yes.
Which is really important.
Sometimes I think it's real. For real? Are you really talking to God? I don't know. I'm trying. So
Plus,
hard
she
to
says
accept
she's
all
never
this.
been to Sunday school or religious education. So it's weird that
Oh, that's interesting.
there and
Yeah.
everybody's-
So it's not been a big thing.
No.
Religion.
My religious beliefs are God's everywhere. If I need to talk to him, I can sit here or I can sit there. I don't have to go to
Yeah.
a church to do it. So
But there
we've
hasn't
never
been a
done
lot
church.
of talk to her about this.
No.
Oh.
She definitely transitioned from being very antsy, edgy, constantly calling my name for the past 2 years, every 15 minutes. Mom, hey mom, hey mom, hey mom, to. I haven't heard my name.
When you think about it, there's no language for this for a child from us.
Right.
But something's telling her in some fashion,
That
right,
it's okay.
that she's okay.
Well, I did let her know that mommy will be in that castle someday when it's my time. And I think that might have eased her thoughts a little bit. And I also let her know that his daddy will be there too someday. So, after the conversation with God and after my talk with her, she's been.
You couldn't have done this any better, you know.
It's her job.
Yeah, it is. It's my job. I'm her mom.
So, the monitor incident happened on a Monday, and as Michelle is saying, she was always calling her through the monitor, and then she stopped calling her once this occurred. This is filmed on a Tuesday, and Ginny slept from there to her death on a Friday. And again, what was so interesting is she had never been to church, so it's quite an interesting story. So, just some final thoughts. So these are profound experiences. They are ultimately life-affirming. What we know and what we experience of dying is so tragic, but there's this other element. I often get the question, what does it mean? Because the extrapolation is what happens, does this inform us of what happens after? And I'm not sure it's a harbinger. It's really not what I'm interested in. I think that this process itself is mysterious and a wonderment, and that there's a message that people are actually reconnected, and again, given this sense of belonging, and really the best things of having lived seem to come back. What I didn't mention is what's most fascinating is the people who harm us are edited from the process. So it's extraordinarily common that one parent loved the person right, nurtured them, and the other one less so. That person is excluded. I've had somebody who had 3 husbands. They really loved the second one, and number 1 and 3 don't show up. So it's just extraordinary. a gentleman who had lost his arm playing around trains. He was a little boy. He had 7 siblings, and 2 of them teased him. Those 2, they're gone. And actually, it's kind of interesting. It's another distressing dream that where you're harmed gets repaired. His concern at that time, they were fairly impoverished, was how was he ever going to be independent? How was he ever going to support himself? He came from a blue-collar family at a time when it was manual. And his mom sent him to a home hoping he'd get a better education. And in his final dream, all of his coworkers come to him and tell him how good he was at what he did. So it's this idea, wherever we're harmed or wherever we're broken, there's this innate process that brings us healing before their end, just like Mac and just like Dwayne. By the way, Dwayne and his daughter, she spent the next 2 weeks with him every day reminiscing, and he never had another distressing dream. So he died in peace. Actually, I'm just going to check my time. Oh, good. This was going to be the end, but I want to show you. This is one of my favorite patients. This is Maggie. And Maggie has cerebral palsy, so this is subtitled. She had speech impediment. She was just a fascinating person. She was, despite having a pretty profound disability, she was about the most joyous person. She grew up in a very Polish neighborhood where there was lots of music and laughter, and all of her extended family was around the block. And so she never grew up with a sense that she just was part of the rich fabric of her community, and that she wasn't somebody who was known for having a disability. When I asked her one day, how was it for you growing up? She said it was changed the day she decided not to go on the cheese bus, the short bus that would take people to school. She'd rather walk in Buffalo winter, another 40 minutes rather than be defined as being a person on a bus. And anyways, so for her, what's interesting is fighting against the dimming of the light or whatever it is. Actually, she was just fighting to get back to Buffalo in her dreams. She, in her dreams, her proudest moment, this is somebody who never got a first prize, never got A's on her report card, but she did have a sense of being loved and valued by her family. And her best dreams are when she relives a moment of her childhood when she's called to the window and all the kids are pointing, and it's her grandfather in the distance playing an accordion. So she got to feel proud, her identity back, and again, that she belonged to something larger. When you watch this, this whole notion of being fearful of death is sometimes actually completely inverted. Her sister had died, and her dreams were actually funny. She would see her parents, and what she would see is a blanket moving across the room, and the blanket would get caught, and they'd peek out, and they'd go, "Shh, you're not supposed to see us now." And it became humorous. And what happened, the constant theme that she was told was, "Not now, don't worry, we're coming for you. Not now, don't worry, not now, don't worry." And then this is her talking about her sister.
I was laying down in bed, my sister came to me. My sister, when I died, she came in by me in bed, and I said, "Stay with me, don't leave me." And she says, "I can't." She says, I just can't stay with you." And I says, "Dad, you gotta stay with me. I'm alone, stay with me." She says, "I can't." And then she says, "So we'll be back, we'll be together." And then she says, "I'll be back." So she just went down. But I want to stay with you. People believe me when I say this stuff. Do you believe me?
Yes.
I think I'll end with Maggie. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Kerr, for walking us through your research. Wow, it was very heartwarming. I think it gives us all pause to think and reevaluate. So ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes, Visiting Nurse and Hospice Care's Associate Medical Director, Dr. Michael Kearney, will join Dr. Carr for a deeper discussion about how end-of-life experiences may be a profound source of meaning and comfort for both the dying and the bereaved. As they set up, allow me to introduce Dr. Kearney. Dr. Michael Kearney has spent over 30 years working as a physician in end-of-life care. He trained and worked at St. Christopher's Hospice in London with Dame Cicely Sanders, the founder of the modern hospice movement, and worked as medical director for Our Lady's Hospice in Dublin, and later with Professor Balfour Mont at McGill University in Montreal. Dr. Kearney is currently a medical director of the Palliative Care Consultation Service at the Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, and he is an associate medical director for Visiting Nurse and Hospice Care. He teaches nationally and internationally and is the author of 2 popular books, Mortally Wounded and A Place of Healing. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kearney.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you so much, Chris. That was just absolutely beautiful, really wonderful. Thank you for sharing your research and your experience, but also sharing your patience in the way you did. That was really very special. So what we're going to do is have a little conversation for a little while. And then open up to some questions from the floor, if you're good with that. And so just to let everybody know that there is on this aisle and this aisle, there's a microphone. And so if anybody has a question, we'll just have a little time for questions at around 10 to 7 or so. So you can make your way to the microphone at that stage. So Chris, what I'd like to begin with is, you know, I'm so struck by the sort of quality that comes through those stories. People, you know, describing their dreams, but just the quality of their experience. And I mean, you talked about comforting or distressing, and you made the point that even distressing dreams can be profoundly meaningful, as you beautifully illustrated. And just what sort of struck me is that they are this incredible resource, this innate, incredible resource that we all have within us, that, you know, as we all know, happens for us when we're well, but it seems to almost accelerate during the illness process and maybe close to death even more so. And it just strikes me that, you know, and you commented on this, how we have this incredible resource coming to us from within. If it were to take the form of a pill, an antidepressant or an anxiolytic, that actually relieved the fear of death, that actually gave our patients a sense of meaning, you know, we would be receiving the Nobel Peace Prize.
We wouldn't be sitting here.
We wouldn't be sitting here. And yet, you know, until you came with your team and did the research that you've done and presented this, we really haven't kind of begun to take this seriously. There is this just incredible resource. I happen to have a big interest in dreams and did some research a number of years ago and realized that at the very beginning of Western healthcare, dreams were right at the center of healing. Mm-hmm. That way back then, at the time of Hippocrates, who lived at the same time as Socrates, about 500 BCE, while Hippocrates was beginning the modern medical approach, which is now our dominant paradigm in healthcare. At the same time as that was happening, there was what was called temple medicine, where the patients or the pilgrims went to the temple, slept on the ground, slept on the earth, and whatever dream they had that night was believed to be a visit from the God of healing. So dreams were seen literally as epiphany and transformative. And Hippocrates had the greatest respect for the whole temple medicine tradition. But since then, that whole tradition went one way, and evidence-based empiric medicine went the other way. And so we're in a situation now where in our hospital, in Cottage Hospital down the road, every night our patients are having these dreams, these profoundly, potentially transformative experiences. And in our hospices, there are patients in their own homes, and at Serenity House and Sarah House, our patients are sleeping every night, but we're just not tapping into that potential.
No.
And I just...
Well, worse than that.
Please.
We, if anything, we sterilize them from the experience. So we tend to take somebody who has maybe having atypical experiences and unrelatable experiences, instead of honoring them, we actually will medicate for them. And I've actually had a lot of patients who have been on something that's induced sleep, and they vanish, they go away, and they miss them. Yeah.
So just on that point real quickly, our hospice patients, as you're well aware, are often on a lot of medications, including opioids and steroids and so on.
Yeah.
Have you looked at that? I mean, that the effect that all these meds have on the dreaming process?
You have to understand that a lot of our position on, when I first tried to explain this to people, nobody would take me seriously. So we were very thorough and really no confusing in looking at the effect of medications. So we monitored that if there was any change in medication, and there's nothing to be found. As you know, a lot of people in the dying process actually end up on less medicine, but not more medicine, or there isn't a change in their medication. But that's why the filming was so important, because from being lucid isn't clearly the issue. Yeah.
Chris, can I ask, the research you've done, have you managed to find sort of simple ways of bringing this approach of dream listening and dream valuing and valuing these experiences, to the bedside in your hospice and palliative care work?
Yeah, I think if I were to get larger medicine to do it, then I would get the Nobel. But I haven't had much luck with mainstream medicine, certainly within our hospice. It's very interesting to give this talk to a group of, I've actually had this experience, group of medical students who haven't maybe experienced death, and nobody can relate to it. And then you go across the street and give it to a room full of nurses, and everybody's nodding their head, tell us something we don't know. So I think it's inherent in the practice of good bedside clinicians. Honestly, one of the biggest referrers in our first study was an aide. And it was just inherent in her. She knew intrinsically that there was therapy in this and wanted to validate the person, so regularly communicated to them about them. So it really is fascinating who sees us and who doesn't.
What do you think the minimum we need to do as caregivers to just to tap into this potential?
I think the biggest takeaway is to create the space, the permission for people to disclose. The analogy I give, we were talking about it today, it's like trying to get a man to confess who's short of breath to confess that he's anxious. You tell him, hey, a lot of people who are short of breath are anxious. Are you anxious? Oh, yeah. It's kind of the same thing with this. It's interesting, there's people who need this permission, and you can actually watch them physically relax. Oh, yeah, you should hear what happened last night. Other times I have people who come in waiting for them. The biggest differentiator is typically how long you've lived. Because if you've reached your 80s, you've seen this. So, and that's one of the tragedies, as as physicians, we're not the ones, as the people responsible, we're not the ones telling our patients this is okay. It's really family members or people who are giving wise counsel.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, that, you know, to listen to somebody's dream, to give them that permission, to create that kind of space that you talk about. We don't have to be psychoanalysts.
No.
We don't have to be psychotherapists.
I think it's the unpsychotherapy. These people aren't disclosing. Did you hear anybody disclosing this as a question? The time for therapy is over. I mean, they're really given the meaning. They're given the feeling. They're transformed in some way. It's not a journey. It's an end unto itself. Yeah.
So really, it's more about just creating a space that welcomes their story.
Yeah, that validates their experience. And maybe the fact that, you know, we don't know. And that's okay. But that doesn't make it any less real. When somebody tells you, like Florence did, talking about her deceased husband and daughter, you know, I wasn't sure whether this actually happened. I think you can do harm by saying, you know, it's just a dream. Actually, in the full video of Dwayne, a nurse made the mistake of telling him that it was just a dream, and he went nuts. He said, oh no, this happened. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think you modeled also, you know, just to acknowledge what a nice job I think you did in your interviews with the patients when you were just inviting them to tell the story and to clarify, and then asking them, how did that make you feel?
You know, I think the one thing that's fascinating is my editorial on this is that if you can't enjoy that patient interaction as a fellow human, and personalize in some way, I just think the distance is harming, and it's ultimately rewarding, and that's when you create the room for them to teach us, and that's kind of, I think, what you can get from this.
And isn't that so true, that in moments like we witnessed here, really the meaning is flowing both ways.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying as a caregiver. And
Absolutely. Touching. It's funny you say it that way. So what happened was when I started, we had a 10-bed inpatient unit, and I was a cardiology fellow at the same time, so I'd go from the cath lab to a hospice. And I'd be going from room to room, and at that time, there was still a lot of World War II vets still around. And, you know, I'd see 3 or 4 people who were seeing people I wasn't seeing. So for the first long time, I just kind of went about my business and listened to their heart and felt their bellies and got on my way. But eventually, it just became so utterly undeniable. And then it was just a recognition that this was so therapeutic. And you know, I talk about this in the TED Talk. The case that really changed me was when a mother was holding a baby, and nobody knew the reference to the baby until her sister came into town and told us that she had lost a baby that she never spoke about. And then I realized, okay, you might not want to ignore this, so that's how it happened.
Right, beautiful. And I think that's very affirming for family members to hear as well, you know, that this is not something that you need a lot of expertise.
No,
you know,
probably better of less.
Better less. But it's a lot to do with attitude, right? It's a lot to do with really respecting this process, whatever it is.
Yeah, and it gives you a more distant perspective where what you begin to appreciate is there's this kind of currency that these lives have. We think of life in these moments, particularly medical, you know, these intervals, and then you see that, boy, I mean, it always stuns me to see an 87-year-old man who's talking about smelling the perfume of his mother and he lost when he was 5. And, you know, it's remarkable.
I guess just the last question I have, Chris, is, I mean, could you ever see us getting to a stage where, you know, tell me, did you dream last night? could become a question that our nurses are asking in an acute hospital setting.
Ours do. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you read it in their notes all the time.
In a hospice setting or in the hospital?
In the hospice setting. Do I see it happening outside of hospice?
Yes.
I'd be lying if I said yes. The reality is care is more and more fragmented. It's more organ-based. We take less care of the person in totality. It's more death-denying and death-defying. No, I don't really see it. What I do see happening is exactly this, which is people who are living and caring and thinking about their own mortality. I think that awareness will increase. You look at death cafes, you look at the attendance here tonight. So I think I would look less to mainstream medicine to incorporate this into practice. There obviously are people who do, but I think the real change is from us.
In hospice and also encouraging family members.
Absolutely.
With their loved ones at home. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Chris.
you.
So let's open a little bit to. Thank you. Good. Please.
I was curious about the facilitating of the dreams and whether that actually enhances the comfort of the individual in your perspective. In other words, if family members they ask, did you dream? And having the dying talking about it, do you think that enhances their comfort itself rather than just perceiving?
Does it help the family?
Well, no, and the dying as well, to be able to talk about it. Their comfort, and the family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what the data shows, is that it's not only comforting, but it helps them actually grow. In terms of the bereaved, it's clear. I had an interesting case recently where I walk into the room and the daughter's in the corner with her hands in her lap because her mom is speaking Polish. And it's very unsettling. And that's a thing for those we have a loved one who's dying, they appear differently. And then they start talking differently. So I explained to her, this is really common. I come back the next day and the daughter's taking all of these notes. And she's hearing about her mom's parents, her childhood friends, her dog. She got reacquainted with the younger person who she didn't know.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mickey.
Yeah, I'm an admit nurse for Visiting Nurse Hospice Care. And I had an experience today with the daughter of the patient that I was admitting, and she was giving me all of these symptoms. She was saying, well, she's not eating, she's losing weight, she doesn't want to get out of bed. And then she said, and she's seeing her mother, and she's making plans to go somewhere. So
you can be giving this talk.
But what was great about hearing you after having been in that visit is that as a nurse, that's what we can do.
Oh,
is you think of these symptoms of the dying and you can bring out, and they might have visions and they might have dreams.
Yes.
And you may want to take account. You may even want to record them.
Yes.
So that's what I'm taking away from today.
Good.
So I really appreciate
that's nice to hear.
your
Thank you
work.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mickey. Just to add to that point, I think, that's one of the deeply reassuring things that I take from your presentation as well, Chris, is that, we can think, those of us working in healthcare and in hospice, that somehow it's all up to us to get it right for our patients. We want to, and we feel that's the responsibility. But what your work is doing in this area, it's really showing that there's kind of help on the inside too.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's working with that.
Yes, exactly.
We're in it together.
Yes.
In a sense.
There's this innate process.
There's this innate process.
Yeah. All we just have to do is respect it.
And respect it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take one from the other side.
Yes, hello, Chris.
Yes.
Are you familiar with a businessman? His name is Robert Monroe. He wrote a book, Journeys Out of the Body.
No.
Yeah, you should consider it, because you realize a lot of this is not just dreams, it's quite literal.
Say that again, I didn't hear that.
It's not quite dreams, it's actually taking place.
Yeah.
It's real.
And that's what they say. Yeah.
Oh, that's what I experienced. I saw, when my mother died, she lives overseas, I saw her walking down the hallway.
Yeah.
And I'm not dying. I even knew the date she would die. I wrote it down.
Yeah,
Told my friends beforehand.
Thank
but the
you.
book, Journeys Out of the Body, will be a book that will
Okay,
edify
I will.
quite a people. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
My-
Let's
my
take one
question
from the
is-
other side.
My question is for both of you. I'm trying to reconcile something that I've heard from each of you. I'm in the Anam Cara apprenticeship, year 1, and we're studying dreams. And in that, it was new to me. We take images of dreams and we're told they are symbols of some aspect of our own unconscious. So if I dream about my husband, it's really not my husband, it's some aspect of me. And here, these folks have had these dreams, they're being called dreams, and that literally is her aunt. That was her aunt she saw. So I'm trying to understand at what point, how to look at dreams. Is it because they're dying? Are these really not dreams? Are they visions? So I'm trying to reconcile something that I've heard from each of you that doesn't connect for me.
Yeah. I actually don't know. Because what's important, and I have trouble calling them dreams, because people are going out of their way to tell me they aren't. And you have to appreciate the fact that how many people are saying these are happening in states of what they feel is wakefulness, even though we don't see them awake and having these experiences. There's certainly a lot less symbolism. Everybody who's ever written about this has said that there's less interpretive stuff, less metaphoric imagery, that it just is what it is. Yeah.
Is it your take as well, Dr. Carney, on what you're...
Yeah, I would kind of go along the same lines, kind of a lot of respect, a lot of sense that there's something kind of, there's something mystery, and that, not to try and pin it down, in one area or another. I think the fact that patients in this situation really kind of distinguish between these experiences and the kind of dreams that they've had all their life up to this point seems to point to me that there's something quite unique about these experiences.
I think we get stuck in trying to put something it's happening in an experience we have no familiarity with. None of us have done this. And we're trying to put it in a paradigm in which it just simply may not fit. And I'm not sure. I think in the end we should just have reverence. And that's it, personally. I think we can get bogged down. I get cross-eyed. I'll talk to a Jungian, a Freudian, or whatever, and dream scientist, and I don't know. I've just been I think my interest has been just to take what they're saying and try to give it validation.
You can take a very phenomenological and deeply respectful kind of approach and kind of leave the book of dream symbols at home,
Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Kerr.
Yes.
As your patients enter hospice, it's hard to tell whether they're frightened, they're not frightened. Have you introduced your movie to the new patients coming in?
No, that's a good idea. No, I haven't. But you know what we are doing? We're creating a pamphlet. So that instead of somebody sitting around wondering for 3 weeks what's happening, we've done this with delirium, and it's fascinating. If people can discover on their own, connect their own dots, if you just kind of lay down the kernels of information for them, they'll put this and contextualize it. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
I think visually
Yeah.
has a greater impact than a piece of a pamphlet.
Well, it's interesting. So wherever this has appeared, it's got an overwhelming response. When it came out in the New York Times, it got more response than the Republican debate that week, which was the first one. And not trying to make a political point, although I am in California, but what's interesting is they're not responding to me saying, oh, that's a great guy giving a great talk. They're telling their own story in a cathartic way. And I think the need for people to express on this. And it's interesting, there's enormous cultural variance. So this is accepted differently, entirely in different parts of the world. Because there's many places where this is the means of connectivity to your ancestors. So it's just like I've had people say, there's nothing new here. We believe, this is our cultural belief.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. We go over to this side, please.
Yes, I'm the other side of the patient that's in the process of dying. My husband and I were married 70 years. And by the time in the hospital, I was with him 24/7, also in hospice care 24/7, slept with him, lived with him. And he had the inability to swallow or speak. And in hospice, he was in a quiet repose. But for myself, we have no children, so we were very close for those years. And I found myself, I've never been a dreamer. If I did dream, I couldn't remember what I dreamed about. But I found myself dozing off, and when I woke, my husband was there in different positions, not all the time. It only happened about 3 times. And he never spoke. He just smiled at me and some kind of different position. And I thought I never would have that happen to me. It was really a phenomena which was not, because I'm a realist and I don't believe that these things happen, but it did happen. And I'm so grateful that it did, because it helped me, it just helped me. And I didn't believe that he was gone for good. It took me 1.5 years to get over the depression and the absence of his being. And a wonderful therapist here at Hospice Care, I'll give you her name, Doreen Pearson, a magnificent therapist. And it was with her help that I got slowly out of the depression and into back to normalcy, which took 2.5 years.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for letting me share.
That's wonderful. I'll tell you a funny story. I was working with a graduate student, and I wanted to do a study, a survey about bereaved people, about the patient's dreams. And the guy got it wrong, and he sent out a survey about the bereaved dreaming. And we published a paper. And it turned out to be really good, because what it turns out is exactly what you described. So here are the features of it. There's usually single-digit dreams. There's tends to be very little said, but there's a comfort given to the person who's experienced loss that that loved one is okay. It's like a reassurance visitation kind of dream experience. And it's unbelievably positive. And people in the survey said, yeah, this changed the direction of my grief, that it closed. And sometimes it was just, they had known so much of physical decline, and they got to see their loved one intact and in health in the dream, and that was incredibly comforting.
And I want to comment how important this feature has been, and it should be done everywhere. I'm 90 years old, and I'm thinking about the end of my life, and this has helped me a lot, and particularly the therapist, of course, because you don't know what the end's going to be like, but it's good to have some idea and feelings about it, and this presentation should be shown in schools.
We're almost out of time, I think, so we just take one last question, please, from the side.
I was wondering if you've done, if you've studied people with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, it's interesting. The answer is no formally, because it's very hard to get it through a university IRB to get permission. So we just completed a book, and I think one of the most interesting pieces of the book is this chapter of people who have different minds. And we have somebody with Alzheimer's, and we have a beautiful story of a woman with Down syndrome who ended up with ovarian cancer, so she had a lot of fluid accumulation in her belly. And her life was defined by a very strong maternal instinct, and she always carried her babies with her. And so in her dream, and that bled into her waking hours, just like the children, and I'm not meaning to reduce all disabilities to children, there was less divide between what they experienced in night than what they experienced in wakefulness when their eyes were open. So she never thought of herself as ill. She thought of herself as going to have a baby. And she thought that when we talked about pain, it was the baby kicking right until the end. And the Alzheimer's patients that we featured was remarkable because the thing I feel very strongly about is that we measure dementia in terms of deficits, and we measure it in terms of realities that are long lost. Presence, numbers you can't count. That becomes the currency. Cognitive loss, but we deny an emotional self that can persist even in very advanced forms of dementia. And this is actually my partner's mother, who she had been brutalized in Nazi Germany, and she was an angry woman throughout her entire life, and made worse by the fact she lost a child at 3. And as she got more demented, she would fixate on a picture of the child and blow him kisses and say how much she loved her. And interestingly, this angry woman became a beautiful, loving woman, and she would thank people profusely for helping her. She became her nicer self. It got so bad that the contrast, that when she saw herself in the mirror, she referred to it as nasty names because she didn't recognize her current, she didn't like the version of her current self. She liked who she was. The point in all of this is her emotional life was still very there. There's just a lot of fascinating stories, and I think we denied them inadvertently, those experiences without knowing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Christopher. I think that last point of, not in healthcare we tend to focus on deficit. What's the problem? How can we fix it? Yeah. What that last story just reminds us is there's so much that's still alive and present, and actually paying attention to that matters.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great questions.
So one last thank you to Dr. Kerr and Dr. Kearney. We're just so appreciative.
So thanks for the questions. They're very helpful.
And thank you to all of you for joining us for our joining Visiting Nurse and Hospice Care for our 6th annual forum. And then if you have any further questions about Visiting Nurse and Hospice Care, hospice services, anything, we have volunteers out at our reception desk that will answer your questions. And again, thank you for coming. We appreciate you sharing time with us.